All right, we'll start up in about 1 minute. It's really good to see you all. Good morning. We'll get into the agenda for the Electoral Areas Service Committee, but prior to that, just a couple of housekeeping items. Again, we have delegations in this morning. Our delegations are 10 minutes in length. In case of an emergency, we have an exit just to my left and one out to the right, and we normally meet out by the muster station just at the mouth of the driveway in the backyard here. As well, we have washroom facilities. Go down through the doors here, down the hall and over to your right, and you'll see 2 washroom facilities there. So without further ado, again, just like to recognize that we are doing business in the unceded traditional territory of the Comox and Petlanats peoples. And we'll move into delegations next. Move receipt number 1. Thank you. Union Bay Community Club. If you would like to come up, the microphone.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come and present with you this morning. I'll go to the next slide. Understanding that we were on the clock, so we're going to walk through this pretty quickly. Hopefully, if yay, it works. So a very brief agenda, as you can see. Next slide, Carly. My name is Jenny Sagan. This is Carly Gilchrist, and we're both members of we both reside actually in Union Bay, and we are both representatives of the Union Bay Community Club Board of Directors. And so we're here today twofold: one, to represent the club, and also to represent the Union Bay community. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are unaware, the Union Bay Community Club is a not-for-profit, and it has been really the hub of our community for over 60 years, providing activities and recreational activities for our community. So current state, why are we here today? Well, the playground that we have on site, I'm going to show you some images shortly, has reached its full lifespan. It's beyond its lifespan now. It was actually moved from the Union Bay School back in around 2006 and brought over to the club, and it serves a whole slew of people. So it's the only playground that currently resides in our community, including the Kilmarnock area. As most of you here will know, Union Bay and the Area A electoral area is growing. We saw nearly a 10% growth between 2016 and 2021. And we're noticing that the demographic is shifting. There's a lot more families that are moving into the area of Union Bay. And we're also home to the Friendly Port preschool and daycare. And that's servicing families all the way from Fanny Bay to Comox. And it is at capacity and has a long wait list, as we can both attest to. So images of the playground, apologies that they're somewhat small, but I tried to capture kind of the best and worst of what our structure looks like. So as you saw on the screen before, we are servicing a pretty large and growing community, and this is what we currently have to offer. So the playground is well over 25 years old now, because it did reside at the Union Bay School before coming over to the club. It has now exceeded its life expectancy and is in a state of disrepair. So whilst the club, the volunteers have done a good job of maintaining that in the past, we're now seeing that the work that would need to happen to the playground in order to keep it safe is just no longer viable. So this is the structure that we have in place, which basically means that our community can look at a playground, but we can't actually touch it safely. The daycare are not allowed to use it. The playground doesn't use code. So again, we've got children that go out and can look at it, but not touch it safely. There is also another smaller playground on the north perimeter. I wouldn't even like to guess the age of this playground, but if we go to the next slide, you'll see sort of particular importance. We have one infant toddler swing, which is in the bottom right-hand corner. And it is falling apart. And I mean, we and our community feels that we just, that is a disservice to our community, that we're expected to put infants and toddlers in a swing that really isn't safe enough to put dolls or stuffies in. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that if you have children and you want to take them outside, that you're basically needing to get, or to a playground, you're needing to get in a car and go down to Fanny Bay or Cumberland or Courtney, which I think, I've heard a lot of the delegation speak before about green initiatives, and it really doesn't align that in order for our children to be able to be in a playground setting, that we have to get in a vehicle. And not to forget that a lot of the families in Union Bay are single car families. So not everybody has the potential to get in a car either. You'll see that we've incorporated a request as well to improve the trail. So the trail runs down from Tappin along the north border of the club, and we want to combine these together for two reasons. One, the trail, and again, I'm sorry the images are small on your screen, but it's not accessible. It's not safe to come down with a pushchair, wheelchair, stroller, strider bike, any of those things, which means in order to access the club, you're having to come along the highway. And we believe that if we're going to invest in a structure of a new playground, we should be able to give the community safe access to come down to the playground. And for those of you that are aware, for the longer term plans of the CBRD managing some parkland in Union Bay, we feel that this trail would connect nicely to the playground, and then in years beyond to the trails behind it. Another reason, if we can go to the next slide, Carly, under our desired future state, I'm sort of jumping forward, but I want to show you where the trail is. So if you look along just basically where the blue line is, that's a water mains, which somebody else on the board is working with another department in the CBRD, so we won't go into that. But just below that is where that trail runs. So if we were with the area that we're looking at, there is a few limitations. One being that we have a very active ball diamond, and so we have to think about foul balls. Two, we've got our tennis court, which is actively used by our pickleball teams and tennis teams. And three, we've got the waterways. So we're kind of left with the restricted areas that we could potentially put the playground. If we were to shore up the trail and make that safe, it allows us to eat into that bank coming closer towards that blue line. So it would not only open up the biggest safe zone for the playground, but then, as I mentioned, also give people safe access to get down to the playground. If we can go to the next slide, Carly, you just see a different image of this. So on your left-hand side of your screen, that's kind of the edge of the tennis court. And then that bank that you can see, the trail that runs along the top of that. And we've had some initial discussion with professional landscape architects, just because of the restrictions that we have. And what's really great is that when they look at it, they see opportunity rather than sort of risk. And what they're looking at is using that bank as a natural feature. So potentially it could be a climbing wall or a slide, or, I mean, really just let your imagination go wild. So that's why we're here today, to request both the playground and trail to happen as one project, to maximize our safe zone and to be able to put an area in that can be used for years to come. So just walking through then our desired future state. So for the playground, what we'd like to see is a safe structure with equipment that is suitable for mixed ages and abilities, and utilising the landscape and space available at the club. Ideally, we would love to think that this project could be completed before our children go to university, and that we can work with local professionals in our community, again, supporting local and also utilising so many volunteers that we have within the community that want to help. We'd love to encourage outdoor play for all children, and really important in a rural community would be to create a hub for families to meet. The trail, again, providing safe access, maximising our safe zone, and to connect to future trails down the road. So just when I was thinking about this project, what did it really sum up for me? And I found this great quote here from Penny Whitehouse, who is a child educator and advocate for outside. So to restore balance, most kids have technology, school and extracurricular activities covered. It's time to add a pinch of adventure, a sparkle of sunshine, and a big handful of outdoor play. And we would love to be able to see that in our own community. So our ask of you today is really to support the project financially. We as a Union Bay board would like to manage the project from design through to construction, and then manage all the maintenance beyond that. So we're not asking for a long-term commitment from you, but more the upfront funds to help us get this project up and running, and again, a safe space for our children and families to play. So attached into your packages, you'll see the two letters that have been submitted formally, one for the playground and one for the trail. So that is our the close of our formal presentation, and we would love the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have or any comments. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation, Director Arbor.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jenny and Carly, for coming over this morning with this project, which I actually thought we would get it completed last term. We did Fanny Bay, and that all went pretty smoothly. It took about a year to do it. I think part of the setback was when COVID hit, and we ended up investing in the child care center instead of the Union Bay Community Hall, and the playground took the back burner. And I understand there's some work happening. We got Mark Harrison at the back, and so I know there's communication with staff around. You've looked at different sites and then ended up coming back, I think, to the community club. And I think everything you said, I agree with. For people in rural areas to have good facilities in place. I think over time, my hope is that we'll have, we're currently actually updating the playground in Hornby, and there's already demand from Craigdarroch and Royston. I think hopefully in 4 or 5 years, we'll have good facilities for children and families in each community in Area A. And you should know on background that I think next month I'll be receiving a report to look at creating a service maybe specific, or starting to explore, I should say, for parks and recreation in Area A. Currently, we're with all the areas, Area A, B, and C. But I think with the expected growth and the demographic trend that you showed, that could be a good thing to look at. And in terms of site planning, I'll have a couple of questions, but in terms of site planning, in the back of my mind too, maybe we're 10 or 20 years away, but when a school gets built at the new site in Union Bay, as part of the Union Bay Estates development, I think there's a very sizable piece of land with the intent of infrastructure, such as baseball rings and stuff like that. So maybe for the Union Bay Club, there could be that early thinking around, because I know the baseball ring there field restricts a lot of what you can and cannot do, but that might be something in the back of your mind as you plan your project and the siding of the playground.
Right.
And I totally agree with the trail. And I think I spoke with Ryan, who you probably know a number of times. Yeah. And he's got good ideas on how to make that operational. So you're looking for a couple $100,000, I guess, for both projects. There's a lot of tax pressure right now around Union Bay, around the sewage project. We have water projects. We have a lot of demand. So I know that I've talked to staff about making some allocation or planning for some allocation. did not ask for 200,000, but there may be opportunities to also maybe explore grant funding if the CVRD could anchor another application and do a 50-50. My question is that I had heard a few weeks ago that there was problem with the siding because of the baseball field and the foul balls and all the rest of that. Did you get a bit more information on that? How it would impact the siding of the playground?
Thanks, Daniel. Yes, so when we started working with some landscape architects, they said that common best practice around baseball diamonds is that there is a setback because of foul balls. So we asked them to provide that in writing so we could share it with the board. And subsequently, through our research, Mark's research, and the landscape architects' research, it really is a best practice. It's not, nowhere is it stipulated that it's an absolute must. So what we've spoken about doing because we want to make sure safety is a top priority for everyone, but especially for children. First of all, we'll be engaged with our baseball low pitch league. Thank you, Carly, who have been playing there for a number of years, and actually start doing some research with them. What is how often are we seeing foul balls come back over? Another way that one of the landscape architects have seen to simply manage a situation is to raise the netting, which we have along the perimeter, but we don't have behind the backstop. And then the setback that is, I think it's 30 meters is what's quoted as best practice. We have that if we move to the backside of the tennis court. So that is, if we go from the tennis court back in that image that we showed, that allows for the setback. And from everything we've heard from the slow pitch league so far, the balls are not going there. They're actually going into the side of the building, which is why we're looking to raise the netting along that side anyway.
Okay, great, thank you. And I know some of the balls are hitting the roof of the hall too, and that's a different conversation because we are talking with you separately about the roof replacement, and it's been on my mind if we put metal and stuff. But my last question is maybe to staff. I know we followed a pretty intentful process with the Fanny Bay Community Association. So I'm just wondering with staff when we might expect to see a report on the work with UBCC on the playground and something for dig our teeth into.
Thanks, Director Robert. Dr. Marzo or Mark Harrison are here if they can add in more detail, but I think there is a report expected in August or shortly thereafter. We're working currently on that, and staff are preparing that. So.
That's awesome. So I guess next month so that's not by the time your kids are in university. I think we'll be able to move
this August,
towards this August next month. So so thank you for the presentation, and really great to see you too.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Director Grief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yeah, thanks, Jenny and Carly. I suppose this is your first stop on the Dog and Pony Show, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think as this thing progresses, there's a possibility of hitting up the service clubs as well. I know that the Merville Hall, the Rotary put the playground in there, so that really helped out a lot. We, as Director Arbor alluded to, we do have a community grant fund that we can at least help with some of the planning stages and get it off the ground. But my question is, are you planning on keeping the horseshoe pitch as well? Is that, maybe I missed that?
Yeah, relocating them because they're generally not well used. We use them a lot around Bay Day, so probably relocating those to another spot, maybe where the existing playground is right now, because that all has to be taken out. So maybe they get moved there, but we would like to keep them on site, just in a different location.
I couldn't help but notice that the greenery in the background of the horseshoe pitch is actually the official flower of Cumberland.
Oh, really? What is that?
Morning glories.
Oh, well.
You can't kill them.
Yeah, Cumberland are welcome to take as many of them back as they would like.
You can take out the Cumberland.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, ladies.
Great.
Have a great day. Vote on receipt. All in favor, carried. Thanks. We'll invite delegation number 2. Thank you. So we have Monica Turfloth coming up. Thanks. Just need to hit the little gray button on. There you go.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to the development of the on 6721 Farnham Road. I represent the residents of Wynn Road, and we're concerned about property development there. We continue to draw attention to the fact that inappropriate fill was trucked onto the 6721 Farnham Road property. Several residents observed that the driveway access base was constructed with imported truckloads of off-site concrete waste, bricks, masonry, and rubble. The material has been covered by road mulch and may contain additional contaminants. The Agricultural Land Commission Information Bulletin 07 describes prohibited fill, and yet prohibited fill was observed being placed as a road base in the new driveway area. Evidently, an agrologist hired by the landowner recently visited this property to help establish the impact of this unpermitted road on ALR land. We have several questions about the agrologist report itself and about the scope of this report. As witnessed by an adjacent landowner, the agrologist was accompanied only by the owner of the property in question. None of the 3 adjacent neighbors who witnessed the dumping of fill were approached to attest to what they saw. And I have a statement here from Vic Marshall, who could not be here today. And he says, I wanted to state for the record that I witnessed multiple large trucks carrying what I presume to be fill waste, consisting of large pieces of broken concrete and scrap metal past our property up Wynn Road last summer. The trucking company was Fell River Logging, and the trucks returned empty. A statement also from Randy Elvis, an adjacent property owner. I witnessed trucks dumping waste during the construction of an illegal road access, and also since the material had been dumped a full 6 feet onto my property, I also unearthed, while digging for the property pin, which they had covered, large chunks of concrete, red bricks, and metal scraps. While we fully acknowledge the landowner's right to build a road to service the land, it is apparent that this particular road is industrial in nature, beyond what would normally be required to farm the land. Its magnitude indicates intention for further development. We request that the CVRD and the ALR ensure that the illegal fill is removed and that any road built is done so according to the rules and regulations which are in place. The landowner has the responsibility to follow these specifications, and as the owner of ALR land, also has the responsibility for good stewardship of this land. The steps the landowner has undertaken thus far have demonstrated a disregard for both. As well, we have ongoing concerns about the areas adjacent to this illegal road build, an area that may well be a forested wetland. If permits had been applied for and correct due process followed, a specifically trained expert may have actually identified and or confirmed this as a wetland before the prohibited fill was placed. We are fully supportive of farming efforts and would love to see anyone succeed in a way that does not negatively impact, but rather enhances the use of agricultural land. Our fear is that this secondary access and campground project will be approved merely to make it right and demonstrate that it can be beneficial to break the law, essentially asking for forgiveness instead of permission. We trust that the investment the landowner has already made to his project does not influence a decision in the landowner's favor. We also recognize that agritourism may be permitted under certain conditions on ALR land. And if the campsites are indeed permitted, in that spirit, we ask that the campsites, along with any approved ancillary amenities, be entirely removed from the current location to within direct visual supervision of the owner, and that access be required only from Farnham Road. The current location should be completely rehabilitated. If there is no suitable alternative location on the property for the campground and amenities due to soil capability limitations, then we ask that this use not be approved. We strongly urge that the ALC and the CBRD address the placement of illegal fill by staying consistent with their current regulations and requiring the landowner to remove the fill and repair the damage. We want the ALC and the CBRD to demonstrate that they actually mean the regulations. We want whatever action is taken by the ALC and CBRD to be a disincentive for others on ALR land to break and intentionally flout the rules. We want a demonstrated incentive to comply from the start. Thank you. And you'll see the map there. The property in question is at the top of the map. And the wetland is where the arrow, the slope of the land leads towards the Solom River. And my home is where the X is in the middle there. So the campground is potentially going to be built, or a good start on it, where that zigzag line is. And you'll notice that all of the other properties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all in the ALR, and 2 of them are active farms. Okay. Now we have John, I guess.
Oh, Monica, if you're open to having some questions, I think Director Grieve would invite you back up to the podium, please. Thanks.
I can you both have the presentation if you want. You want to do that.
It's a separate delegation, so I think we'll just keep them on top of the podium. Thanks. Edwin?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. More questions to staff. And I guess Monica too, because Monica, we've been talking about this for over a year now.
That's right.
And I made a site visit with my friend Monty.
Yeah. And we've written 3 letters to the CBRD and their directors since last August.
Yeah, I'm just wondering though about the fill. The fill was brought onto the owner's property. Was it used on Ministry of Highway right away, or was it just used on his property?
It was used on his property.
So that's obviously the ALR.
That's correct.
Yeah, so we don't have any purview over that.
You can offer a recommendation to the ALR.
Yeah, if they will.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're at on that because, and you say the agrologist was on site.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a private agrologist or was it the government?
It was hired by the landowner.
It wasn't the BC agrologist, not
I'm not sure.
Odell. Okay, so.
No, it was he was hired privately
Okay.
by the landowner and was
And-
requested to do so by the ALR.
So the ALR is live to this. I'm just going to ask staff. Have we heard anything back from the ALR? Are we being CC'd on any of their conversation with the landowner or the other property owners here?
I think Tom True, Manager of Planning Services, will be able to provide a bit of an update on this particular file.
Thanks, James. Through the acting CEO to the chair and directors. What I can confirm is we did receive a non-farm use application to bring in fill for this property. The Regional District Wildlife Compliance Department and the ALC Compliance are working in partnership to bring this property to the proper regulations. So their application itself is a non-farm use to bring in fill for this property. So the ALC regulations allows a property owner to bring in fill to a certain amount. After a certain amount of fill, they need to get a proper approval from the ALC. And this is what the applicants are going through right now.
And can I ask a question? Is there any indication that the source of the fill has been determined, the contents of the fill, whether it contained contaminants, whether the slope is correct as it leads down to the Solom River?
Through the chair to try to answer this question. When staff received the application through their ALC portal, it was missing some type of analysis on the soil that was brought in. It was CBRD staff that requested to the applicant to provide us more information about the soil itself.
Mm-hmm.
Through that, I believe their applicant did hire an agrologist We are working with our garologists right now to figure out what type of information is required for staff to proceed, trying to do that work, but also ensure that their information is adequate for the LCU too.
Mhm.
So basically, we're playing a support position with the ALC on this file.
We're in partnership with the ALC Bio Compliance Department now to resolve this situation. But just a reminder, this is an ALC application.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a referral to the regional district, and this application will be we're hoping to present something to the committee sometime in August or September. Through this process, it will go to the Agricultural Advisory Plan Commission for comments. And you know, if their commission wants to go on a site visit, we will arrange that meeting at the time to go on the site.
But just to be clear, like all other ALC referrals that come before us, they are at liberty to ignore us, right? The decision is the ALC at the end of the day, like subdivision or whatever.
Their ALC has their authority to approve or deny an application, or it's just a referral agency. You may remember a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, we did receive an ALC fill application on towards their on Piercy Road, the winning file. And we
Right, yes.
we did receive an outcome on that, and the ALC did request that applicant to remove the soil.
We asked that they not remove it, but to flatten it down.
Yes, and the ALC decision was that the applicant is required to remove the soil.
So that's where the guns have to be aimed. Thanks.
James, did you want to add any more? Thank you, Monica, for your presentation. Sorry. Yeah, before we get you up there, John, a vote on receipt of the delegation. Well, carried. Thanks. All in favor? Sorry, carried. Thank you. We will invite John up to the podium now. Thanks, John. Just a reminder, 10 minutes, John.
My name is, good morning again. There we go. My name is John Hyde, and I and my wife Miranda live on Wynn Road, which dead ends at our house. And I have agreed to represent its residents and am giving our combined perspective on the activity now accessed by a recently punched in road backdooring a campground developed by a landowner residing at 6721 Farnham. I will be presenting our thoughts on both the content and process of this campground, both what it means and how it is proceeded. In our opinion, the regional district has dangled this commercial plum in the form of agritourism to the man who bought the property at 6721 Farnham Road. We have to assume that whatever attraction an apple orchard or petting zoo affords for a month or two, these campsites will be a full year-round endeavor. Campers can stay for 3 months, leave for 24 hours, then return. There will always be 10 RVs needing a site in the Comox Valley. There need be no authentic farm attraction. The income from the campsites is guaranteed, and it seems irrelevant how the farm status is to be attained. We think it is ludicrous that an acreage owner can invest in an apple orchard and on that basis qualify as an agritourism destination. People don't travel to see an apple orchard. People simply will live there on a campsite. There need not be any connection with any other activity. Now, if one campsite is worth $1,000 a month, a year program based on 10 sites would gross him almost $120,000. It's no wonder he has to date misrepresented the scope of his plans and avoided the permitting process to achieve his ends. The ends in his world are going to justify the means. The Wynn Road residents themselves live on land subdivided from one holding and are accessed by a central road. This proposed campground is situated well away from his Farnham Road residence and is adjacent to properties on Wynn Road. Although the site occupants would be temporary, the impact of their occupation would be like a subdivision of houses. Year-round lights, which after leaf fall are going to be glaring, unregulated noise, generators, and increased traffic on a narrow gravel lane. These are some of the immediate concerns of the residential citizens. Anyone who has camped in a legitimate, distanced provincial facility knows the frequency of offenders partying, ATVing, ignoring campfire bans. This would forever change the quiet rural atmosphere we have preserved for 30 years. The project itself is harmful to the well-being of the residents, but how it has proceeded is another problem, and that dates back to August 3rd, 2022, with the first emergency violation report submitted. Now, during the last week of July last year, I arrived home and observed 10 to 12 yards of concrete rubble at the foot of my driveway. And within a couple of days, an excavator used this material for the landowner's roadbed and worked continually backwards as more Fell River logging dump trucks delivered subsequent loads of concrete waste, then road crush. Within a few days of continuous operation, a hired contractor finished the road beds, built numerous campsites, established a well, installed a septic tank and field, and erected framed building. On August 3rd, that year, of course, we contacted the CVRD, and Matt Dynson discovered and relayed to Miranda that the landowner had none of the permits necessary for this work. He had not at that time even applied for farm status. So the Ministry of Transport did not permit road access. Island Health did not permit a well or a septic system, and the CVRD did not permit the building. The rapid assault carried out in secret holds a lot in common with an invasion, a spectacular example of, I will do exactly what I want with my property and I'm answerable to no one. Now, I hope I'm allowed to construct an analogy drawn from my own personal life. I find it helpful to gain perspective on how outrageous this behavior is. Now, I've been drawing a fishing license for almost 50 years. Before I have a permit, I'm not allowed to go fishing. It's pretty important here. People are not allowed to just go fishing. People are able to become licensed, then they can go fishing. Before I am issued a permit, I am required to specify exactly what I'm intending to do. Fresh water. Do I need a salmon tag to river fish? After that, I have a staggering array of regulations directing my hook type, bag limit, seasonal closures, fish sizes. No wonder the landowner didn't pull any permits, not one. He would have had to answer specific questions of intent from authorized jurisdictions, and that would have slowed down this blitzkrieg, this take them by surprise and get it done approach. My first contact that day was with the operator. The young man says to me, "We're surprised you didn't come down earlier." Up until that day, I was told to my face that any development was on that trail was just, quote, just for a bit of access, maybe for some quadding. Similarly, the landowner told me that the framing was for an electrical shed. Now, that building is approximately 15 by 25 feet, and it's framed with two front entrances, almost like men and women's shower stalls and bathrooms. The landowner's wife more recently told different residents that the building was to be a cider press. So, if you do not go through a permitting process, you can say whatever you want. It is clear to us that $100,000 or $120,000 RV park is the plum, and petting zoos, cider presses, trail rides can materialize later. Chaos and anxiety in 15 households for over a year. Back to fishing. If I'm caught with a rod and without a license, augmented by, let's say, 5 infractions, do you think the conservation officer just forgives me or gives me a chance to go and buy one and legitimize my behavior? I've witnessed streamside fines, gear confiscation, name in the paper reporting for flagrantly non-compliant fishermen. All for what? Maybe $50 worth of pink salmon. Just last July, out of Browns Bay, our guide made us release a 32-pound spring because he figured it was over length. He didn't want to lose his boat, he said. So federal fisheries would confiscate a $750,000 charter boat over 300 pounds of spring salmon protein. So do you know what is being represented in this scenario? What is so precious to merit all this effort, patrols, fear, licenses? And I hope you can see the similarity between fishing preservation and rural lifestyle preservation. I pay for my license, obey the rules, and I expect that my family can have a recreational experience. I do not expect some unlicensed Yahoo snagging fish, live fielding them in front of my kids, breaking the law and ruining my day. Similarly, we do not expect, as paid up citizens, some landowner, unlicensed, installing campsites adjacent to our properties, and at the end of our quiet road, brazenly breaking the law and ruining our lifestyle forever. Short of confiscating his excavator, slapping fines on Fell River logging and the young contractor for site violation and unpermitted activity, we would like this so-called agritourism project seen for what it is, an RV park in the country. The stop work orders have held the line until now. So our ask, we want this campsite denied permission and that the site's well, septic, and wooden structure are deactivated. The development of a campground is not consistent with the health and continuing integrity of an intact residential rural community. Thanks very much for hearing me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your presentation, John. Looks like Director Grieve has a question for you, if you don't mind staying at the podium.
Thank you.
This would make a movie. Make a movie of this thing.
Through it.
Now, you mentioned that he didn't have farm status, but now he does, correct?
Well, I didn't say that, but what is clear is that he didn't have farm status when my wife contacted last summer. He might have gained it subsequently.
So unfortunately, you're back at the ALR because they're allowed 10 campsites. And I'm going to ask staff, I don't believe that we have any purview over the building as well. The building itself is not under the jurisdiction of our building services, correct? Ask.
To the chair, to Director Grieve, what I can confirm is their property does have farm status. Staff did contact their applicant and confirm and asked them if they are planning to have a campsite. And they have informed staff that there is no plans for a campsite for this property. So staff is working with the applicant right now just to confirm that in writing. Because when staff does present a staff report to the committee, we want to ensure that we have the proper information. Staff will also contact the ALC just to confirm that it's their application, make sure that they have their most accurate information, because staff was informed again, as I said, from the applicant that they have no plans on building a campsite.
Would I state that he vastly underrepresents the scope of this project? This is an example. There are 5 campsites already established with electrical to them. Hydro's put in a pole. There's a well, there's a septic field, and there is a pump house for discharge tanks. It's all there right now. So I'm not going to go too far as to make any claims, but this is the nature of his grossly underrepresented scheme. No campsite in planning stage.
Question to the staff again. I don't recall getting a referral on agricultural campsites. Do we get referred on that one as well? Do we get to chime in?
Through the chair to Director Reeve. So the ALC regulation says that when somebody wants to an agritourism use on an ALR land, there's no application required through that process. They need to have farm status. Their agritourism has to be related to some type of farming on the property. As an incinerator, as a secondary use to that property. So the property must have a farm use on the property to have some type of agritourism.
So once again, we've got legal road building. MOTI is not responding, or what have they told you? I'm sure you contacted them as well as VIA or Island Health.
To the best of my understanding, there has been a retroactive permit granted for non-agricultural use, access, non-industrial use. They've given permission for this entranceway. The map isn't up, the one that backs onto Wind Road. My understanding is that's been retroactively permitted.
On Crown land.
It would be his private land, I guess,
Okay.
because there's.
So you're not going to see the snowplow either.
Pardon me?
You're not going to see the snowplow either then.
Possibly not.
Yeah.
Not there.
And what about Island Health on the well?
Well, I don't really know what those coming as goings are. I think that I hear that Island Health has retroactively given him permission to install a well.
So he retroactively did this whole number on you guys.
This is exactly what I'm saying, is that he put it all in completely and then later on applied for permits, which he was granted in this kind of ad hoc fashion from different jurisdictions. No one ever coming out to see what's going on in total. So he's winning.
So the only thing we might be able to weigh in on is the fill he brought in. Is that correct?
So Don, and then we'll go to Director.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, what angle we can work here at the RD, but it seems like it's all provincial. And I imagine you've been visiting Ronna Ray's office or MLA as well, because obviously the buck stops there.
Don?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application itself is an application to bring fill on the property. As I mentioned, that this application will be presented to the Ag APC. Through this process too, staff will be contacting the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure in regards to the access component. Any additional access that is residential use will require an approval from the Ministry of Transportation, i.e. the campsite, if there's a campsite access for the property. Through this process, staff will be sending the proper referrals to other stakeholders and other local governments to make sure that we have all the information to present to the committee.
So yeah, I'll let you go, but the AAPC is the Agriculture Advisory Planning Commission, which is a commission of the 3 electoral areas that weigh in on anything to do with the ALR. And agriculture in general. So at least we got a toehold there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I guess for the Wind Road residents, which probably is a new organization, I haven't heard about it. Sometimes it takes an event like that to galvanize people. So just to be clear, I think going back to fishing, you're right that it's upsetting when it feels like neighbors or otherwise are maybe moving too fast and not necessarily going through all the steps. But what I'm hearing today is both our staff and the Agricultural Land Commission have their attention to this file. We don't have licenses at local government in the rural areas. They do in the municipalities, but we don't have a licensing process, which is why sometimes for us to work through some of these problems, it takes a long time. I have an issue around ship breaking in my area. We're now at 1.5 years, you know, and so the tools that we have at our disposal are few to deal with land use regulations. But I'm pretty reassured today that with our staff's attention and working collaboratively with the ministry, that this will come to a resolution around this issue in time. I would also note that the ALC has flexed its muscles in the past. I know the Chemainus River campground, if you look it up, that was an RV site for 45 sites, and they tried to add 10 more, and the ALC not only denied the permission to put 10 more because it was not agritourism related, they actually asked them to remove the 45 pre-existing sites. So I don't know what the conclusion of that, because there was a battle going on because the mayor at the time came to the defense of the campground. So I don't know how that file ended. But just so you know that none of the governments like it when the rules are skirted or ignored. So I just encourage you to have patience as our staff continues to work through that. And I know that they'll be bringing a report to us.
And I kind of regret that a little bit. Okay, good morning.
Vote on receipt. All in favor? Here. So moving into resolution status report.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Any questions, comments? Maybe we'll take a 3-minute recess here. Still got a little bit of unfinished business with regards to item C and resolution status report. Vote on receipt of the report. All in favor? Thanks. Carried.
Move all the minutes. Currently.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Somebody from staff going to comment on this report?
I'd like to introduce Brian Chow, who will introduce the staff report and the applicant. Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you. CEO to the chair and the committee. So the first one is an commercial and industrial form and character development permit, as well as a development variance permit for the property at 8659 Island Highway North. This property is approximately 0.5 hectares in size, is currently undeveloped, and is zoned industrial light. The applicant proposes to build a building for repairs and maintenance of their excavation equipment and trucks. And this proposed building requires a form and character development permit. The outdoor area is proposed to be used to store equipment and trucks. The applicant, as part of this application, requests to vary the fence and hedge regulations in the zoning bylaw. Firstly, with the development permit check, the development permit area guidelines are intended to ensure adequate buffers between different uses and to ensure development is attractive and coordinated with respect to the form and character of the neighborhood. The proposed building meets the development permit area guidelines based on form and character, landscaping, screening, parking, and rainwater management. Details of the guideline adherence are included in the staff report. For the development variance permit, the zoning bylaw regulates fence height and requires hedges for lot lines abutting highways. The intent of these regulations is to ensure adequate screening between outdoor uses and surrounding properties. Due to site topography, lot layout, and the existence of an easement area, the applicant proposes to vary these regulations. Firstly, to permit the range of fence height between 1.8 meters and 3.5 meters, because the proposed fence will be at different heights depending on whether it's on the finished grade or on lock blocks. And the height of lock blocks contributes to the measurement of the overall fence height. With respect to the hedging requirement, first of all, there are two lot lines that abut a road on this property. For the western lot line, it abuts to an unnamed road, which is quite narrow and too short to leave room for both hedging and the possibility of a future gate. And for the eastern lot line that abuts the Island Highway North, currently there's an easement in order to allow vehicle access to the shared access between the subject property and to the commercial lots to the north. So having a hedge there will be impractical. In fact, could be dangerous. So the variance are in keeping with the intent because the varying fence height is to account for the site topography. The proposed fence will not pose any danger to pedestrians and vehicles, and the fence and the proposed landscaping will provide adequate screening. The Advisory Planning Commission for Area C supported the proposal, and just a comment, Area C APC also commented on the need for any outdoor cleaning of equipment and trucks. And the applicant responded with a proposed outdoor cleaning area where such runoff will be directed to a storage tank to be pumped out when needed. Lastly, the adjacent owners' letters were mailed within 50 meters of the property. And as of now, I've not received any comments from adjacent neighbors. Based on these considerations, planning staff supports the issuance of the development variance permit and the issuance of the DP. Their agent, Howard Zimmerman, is in attendance to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks to staff and to the applicant for pretty comprehensive package. Looks really good. Lucky owner of one of the few industrial light properties in the rural areas. We don't have a lot of them, and it's good to see them in use. My only suggestion, which is not binding anything, is just me commenting. You know, I've been thinking about how hot our summers are. And I noticed that a lot of the trees and vegetation are going to be kind of on the north side of the property, but it may be worth planting some trees on the south side of the building on the edge to create some shade. And the rest of that, I realize that a lot of our buildings are becoming quite insufferable in the summer, but that's just a sidebar. Otherwise, the plan looks really good. Thanks.
Thanks. Now we'll provide an opportunity for any of the public to provide any comments on the application, if there's anybody in the room or online. Not looking like we have any, anybody from the public. Does the applicant want to approach the staff and directors, or are you fine? Okay, with that being done, then I guess we're looking at a vote of receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Vote on receipt of recommendation. All in favor? Carried.
Group 3.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? So are you looking at Brian or Ton in regards to the report?
Brian Chow will introduce the staff report as well and the applicant. Brian.
Okay, thanks through the CEO to the chair and committee. The next one up is a rezoning application for an unaddressed lot on Wilford Road. The property is currently designated as settlement node and is zoned residential 1. The applicant proposes to rezone the property for a 2-lot subdivision, with each proposed lot being 0.18 hectares. Just a comment that this proposal is affected by the water connection suspension of the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Local Service Area. In May 2023, BCOB Services Committee was advised that the initial results of the new well appear to meet future projected demand. While more information is needed, especially there's enough water to meet the summer demand. If additional data reveals positive results, the suspension may be lifted in the fall of this year. Due to this possible status change and the time to process a rezoning application, this application is recommended to continue. One of the objectives of the settlement node designation is to accommodate growth subject to suitable rural servicing. And this application to facilitate 2-lot subdivision is generally consistent with objectives to promote growth by residential intensification. Staff recommends First Nations and agencies referrals for this application be initiated. Once this process is complete, comments will be presented to the board for consideration of the next steps. Further, the board is recommended to authorize staff to begin discussions with the applicant on the voluntary contribution of community amenities. Any resulting volunteer amenity proposal will be presented to the board for consideration prior to the scheduling of any public hearing. Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry. The applicants, Christine and Connie McMillan, are in attendance to answer any questions you may have.
Director Green?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. No, we discussed it at length at the APC, and obviously, I think I have to agree with staff that with the impending addition of the new well to the water system, it looks very promising that we'll be lifting the moratorium on connections. I think last I heard September. So being that the process of governance grinds on and on, Well, I think we're smart in just continuing with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here to provide any other comments or questions? All right. The podium is there if you'd like to provide any further information. No pressure. There's a little gray button on the microphone there. There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Connor McMillan. Good morning. I think it's important that we've been working on this file for about 2 years. We purchased 4 properties adjacent to this property with the hopes of development. We've installed an MOT rated highway grade road to service those 4 lots. In addition, hoping to service this 5th lot. In this 2-year window of time, we've requested water hookup, which was insufficient. So we've actually drilled and dug wells for all 5 lots. Obviously 4 current and 1 expected or hopefully additional 5th lot. So I'm hopeful and I'm happy to hear water's coming for additional lots, but I deem our lots have already serviced drilled wells approved by the MOT, like as in meeting their specifications. So that's all I'd like to add. I'm happy water's kind of en route, but I feel like we've already dealt with that situation. I don't know if it's possible, Ton or to switch to the additional, or Brian to switch to the additional page, last 2 pages of that, kind of showing the lot layouts. Yeah, so that's current lot 4. If we can zoom out.
And then go to the next one,
Yeah, so that's what's proposed. So we own the adjacent lot south of that, showing the kind of lot layout. And then if you, so that's suggested. There's currently 2 additional driveways. That darker area shows the new paved and highway grade road that was mandatory to access those lots. And it was also at the time of construction and prior to planning, could have been gravel road access when discussing with MOT, but it was suggested and mandatory to be asphalt if I wanted additional lot. So we did the extra cost, we invested the extra money for that, being hopeful with no guarantee, but definitely improving the neighborhood. If anybody happens to take a tour down that way, they'll notice that's going to be the nicest highway or road in Black Creek. You'll see at the end of it, there's what they call a hammerhead instead of a roundabout, which is great for rollerblading. So neighborhood kids from additional houses can enjoy that space, and our kids, when I'm working down there, actually quite enjoy scootering down there. So not that that's a large benefit to the neighborhood, but the actual work that's been down there has been
likes it.
has improved the whole situation. So I suggest anyone in the area kind of take a look at that and consider our already current investment. So I think that's it. And I would just like to highlight that there is currently drilled wells on lot 4 and 5 suggested, and MOT has also said that they would approve those for water consumption. Obviously, Island Health has to be a part of that as well, and we're working through that. And I appreciate your time. I think that's all I have to say currently. Yeah. And
Thanks. We do have a question from Director Arbor for you.
sure.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you came to the mic to provide that additional information and in addition to the asphalt. And it sounds like you still have a couple steps too in the report. I saw the biophysical assessment that's going to be needed because of what has been needed because of the course, the unidentified water course. And so you're having all these little all these little hoops to jump through. From my perspective, the development is very consistent with the pattern of development in the general area, so I really don't have any concerns. And I noticed too that as we send it to referral, there's a comment too about looking at community amenity contribution as per our policy. I don't see myself, maybe my colleagues would disagree, but I don't see a high need on the basis of some of those other things, steps you've taken as per Modi. But sometimes we find little things. I don't know if staff wants to comment on that aspect, whether there's stuff that you have in mind, or whether you'd rather to just work directly with the applicants over the coming weeks on that.
Through the chair to Director Arbor, so the next process, if this committee supports to move forward, we will be working with the applicant to have that voluntary discussion. Once that is in place, and if we agree to something, we will report back to this committee.
Okay, thanks so much. I'll be in favor of moving this forward.
Thank you. Can I just mention one last quick thing? I do want to point.
Come to the microphone, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for hearing us speak. I do want to point out that a RAPR, the Riparian Areas Protection Regulation Assessment, was not triggered throughout our time in building the roadway itself, and we went through all the appropriate steps in doing so. I know it says in here the report identifies an unmapped water course. I do want to be clear. I have a question. Was that a decision from staff and they're able to make that decision based on what they're seeing there? Because I was told that that's due to a ditch running through there. That ditch was there previous to us building the road. So I'm just curious, with that being triggered, I just want you to know it wasn't triggered while we were doing the full construction of the roadway through MOT.
Right.
Through the CO to the chair and to the applicant. So our IMAP program is a reference tool to show the presence of any mapped water course. So during consultation and meetings with applicants, this was not flagged just because our IMAP as a tool was not shown. But during the review for this staff report, I reviewed the rainwater management report prepared by a professional engineer, and they identified an unmapped water course as being a ditch running along Wilford Road. And any development, including subdivision, within 30 meters of any bodies of water course will trigger the aquatic and riparian habitats development permit, which requires the riparian assessment and other biophysical assessment. A couple of comments I'll make is this will be needed at the subdivision stage. So at this, after the rezoning, if this rezoning were to be successful, so we do not need it at this point. And again, whether our water course is mapped or not, is whatever's on the ground shall be the determinant of whether a riparian assessment report is needed, because mapping is not perfect. It's just get us to have a conversation and reference to. And so let's leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Does that clarify things for you?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Thanks for coming to the podium. So next, I guess we'll vote on receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried.
The recommendation.
Thank you. All in favor of the recommendation? Vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, moving into item number 4. Thank you.
And again, Brian Chow, our planner 2, will introduce the staff report and the applicants. Brian.
I'm sorry, to the CEO, to the chair, to committee. Next one up is a farmland protection development permit for the property at 5254 Lanois Road. And the applicants are in attendance to answer any questions you may have. As you may be aware that applicants are going through a 2-lot subdivision under section 514 of the Local Government Act for the subject property. And this property abuts Seal Bay Nature Park, which is within the agricultural land reserve. The size of the proposed lots A and B are 0.65 hectares. Sorry, for the lot A is 0.65 hectares and lot B is 0.86 hectares respectively. As this is a subdivision adjacent to AR land, farmland protection development permit is required to mitigate any potential conflicts between current and future agricultural use and non-agricultural uses on the subject property. This subdivision layout meets the development permit guidelines. And for example, each proposed lot has enough depth of at least over 100 meters to accommodate future buildings without requiring another development permit. The applicant proposes a 3-meter wide buffer with native and fire smart species along the lot line interface with the AR land. This planting complements with existing wire fence along the boundary. The Agricultural Advisory Planning Commission supported the proposed buffer, as well as Ministry of Agriculture and Food staff commented that based on the current proposal, the proposed planting is sufficient. Staff supports the issuance of the DP as it meets the guidelines, Mr. Chair.
Any questions, comments, directors? Director Arbor?
Maybe the end of the road on this file. We've been going at it for a little while. Yeah, you're happy. And it's good to see some common sense recommendation coming out of that. So hopefully this will all go through. I'll be in favor of proceeding. I like the buffer idea, and yeah, maybe is this the last time we see this at this table? There's still the board to go through, I guess.
Good. Be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, through the staff. So basically we're buffering against one of our parks, but the park happens to be in ALR. So this particular piece of Seal Bay Park is part of the, it's not the part we own, right? It's just leased from the province. Is that correct? So it may revert to farmland one day. So that's the rationale. Okay, thank you.
At this time, we'd like to provide an opportunity for public, either via, oh, sorry, just we'll invite the applicant up to the podium if they would like to direct any questions or comments for staff or the committee.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. In fear of incriminating myself any further and delaying these proceedings. Yeah, I just really, again, appreciate the assistance of the staff. They've been saddled with some pretty intense bureaucracy on this one. And I just really appreciate your patience and working through everything with us in a really professional way. So thank you. Yeah, in regards to this file, I really hope that we keep progressing in order to streamline this a little bit. Director Grieve, you brought up that, yeah, this is ALR property or ALR designation on a park. I think that's something to follow up on. I have followed up with our esteemed MLA, who has basically just said, go talk to somebody else. So I will be following up on that as well. I have spoken to the Agricultural Land Commission, just for everyone's information, and they've basically said when they receive a letter of support to omit ALR from Seal Bay Park and suggest that we do that, it's a 2-month process to do so. So I highly recommend that the RT confer with the province and suggest that as a commitment that we can all take as a community to maybe have a look at omitting the ALR from Seal Bay Park if we're not going to log it. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
comments. All right, so we're on receipt, vote on receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried.
The recommendation?
Thank you.
Excuse the.
Oh, we can excuse the speak from the podium. Thanks.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Director Arbor?
Thank you. Just as a subsequent, picking up on the earlier comments from the applicant, is there staff comments? It may not be planning, it might be actually community services and parks, but is there opportunity for us to look at follow up on looking at ALR and the situation around Seal Bay Park and the opportunity to maybe make that parcel more secure in time as a park?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CVRD does lease that land. I believe it's a crown lease from the province. I'm looking at Doug DeMarzo, General Manager of Community Services, to assist if needed. But it is something that we would regularly look at. It is a long-term lease, and so we do try to secure that for as long as possible. As to the status of ALC on that, or ALR on that property, that would be a separate process to go through, whether we'd want to consider requesting an omission from the ALC for that particular land, and that would, I'm sure, probably be part and parcel with the lease itself. So not something that we've actively looked at currently, and but I can assure you that we do look to secure the lands for as long as possible, knowing the importance of that Seal Bay Park to the community.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe we'll leave it for today, but maybe the way I could bring this back is really to ask for looking at the status of all our parks and how many are like just fee simple and how many are under special arrangements and whether there are pathways to beyond Seal Bay, but including Seal Bay, to whether we have a strategy to try to make sure that they're solid for the long term.
Thank you, Director.
Okay, I'll move 5.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
And again, Brian Chow, I believe this is the last report that you'll be presenting for the day. So over to Brian.
All right. Yes, through the CEO to the chair and committee. This is a site-specific floodplain consideration application for the property at 1762 Astor Road. The property is 0.11 hectares and is zone residential 1. This oceanfront property currently has a single detached dwelling, and the applicants propose to build a carriage house at approximately 56 meters from the sea. Whenever there's construction of new habitable area within 100 meters of the sea, an engineer must determine the flood construction level and the floodplain setback to the year 2100 that are required in order to render the new habitable area safe for the intended use. This is a requirement of the 2018 update to the Provincial Flood Hazard Area Land Use Management Guidelines. The engineers prescribe a 6-meter flood construction level, that's the vertical measurement, and a 120+ meter floodplain setback, leaving no building envelope. The minimum height is achieved by elevating the habitable area on the second story of the carriage house, leaving non-habitable area on the first story. In situations where existing parcel cannot accommodate the prescribed setback, an engineer can propose mitigation strategies that will enable the proposed habitable area to be safe for the intended use. In this instance, the engineer confirms that a floodplain setback of at least 15 meters from their present natural boundary with specific risk mitigation strategies in place would enable the carriage house to be safely used. The strategies are included in the staff report for reference. In considering whether to accept the engineer's report, staff recommends the board to require the engineer's report to be registered as a covenant against the land title and that a clause indemnifying the CVLD from liability be included. Staff recommends accepting the engineer's recommendation because the proposed carriage house is 41 meters landward from the engineer's prescribed floodplain setback of 15 meters, providing space for the flood water to retreat. And the report meets the LGA threshold as a qualified professional concludes the land is safe for intended use, provided the risk mitigation measures are implemented, and that a covenant will be registered. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chair, and I do not believe the applicant nor the agent are in attendance or on Zoom. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Vote on receipt of the report then. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And vote on recommendation. All in favor? Carried.
I'll move 6.
Second. You. All in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Cassie Marsh, our planner 2, will be introducing this the staff report and the following staff report. So Cassie, over to you.
Through the acting CAO to the chair and committee members. An application for a site-specific floodplain setback to the floodplain management bylaw has been received for the property at 521 Andrew Avenue. The subject property is approximately 0.11 hectares or 0.27 acres. Existing development includes a single detached dwelling. Proposed is an addition to the single detached dwelling on the second story where there is currently a deck. Being within 100 meters of the sea, the applicant hired a professional engineer to prepare a geotechnical report relating to flood hazard per the floodplain management bylaw. The report prescribes a flood construction level of 5.7 meters, which the proposal meets, and establishes that the year 2100 floodplain setback extends largely beyond the property itself, leaving the property within the floodplain setback, and thus the applicant has applied for a site-specific engineer's prescription for the siting of a proposed addition from the bylaw, as permitted through Section 524 of the Local Government Act. The engineer prescribes a setback of 69 meters from the present natural boundary. The single detached dwelling where the addition is proposed is approximately a further 18 meters landward from the 69-meter setback. The professional engineer provides 9 risk reduction strategies. The risk reduction strategies are proposed to bring risks down to lower and tolerable risk ratings. These strategies speak to adhering to the flood construction level for any future additions, protecting the site from erosion, and site grading to permit efficient drainage on the property and a post-development report. The engineer's report concludes that the land is safe for the intended use, provided that the building is horizontally offset at least 60 meters from the present natural boundary, that the flood construction level is met given that the addition is on the second story, and that the risk reduction strategies are applied. Staff recommends the approval of the site-specific proposal because the engineering report will be registered as a covenant against the property, and the approach taken is in line with provincial guidelines. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will note that the applicants, Wendy and John Pitcairn, are in attendance today. Thank you.
Any questions? Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I'm in support of the application, and I just want to say I think it's your first time presenting while I'm here. So welcome to the team and to this table, and thanks for the good work on this file.
Thank you.
If the applicant would like to come up and provide a couple of comments or none, perfect. All right, thanks very much. So we're voting on receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried.
Move the recommendation again.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, carried. Vote on recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Item number 7.
I'll move it.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Development variance permit.
And again, over to Cassie Marsh for introducing this report.
Through the acting CAO to the chair and committee members. Staff have received a development variance permit application to reduce the rear yard setback for a single detached dwelling from 1.75 meters to 1.64 meters. The subject property is approximately 0.037 hectares or 0.09 of an acre. Is zoned Mount Washington Comprehensive Development Zone in the sub-district of Resort Accommodation 2. The property is designated as being within the settlement node. The single detached dwelling is under construction. The columns were already in the ground when this final measurement error was discovered at the time that a final site survey was completed. The intent of building setbacks includes to reduce impacts on neighbors related to privacy, shadow, noise, and fire separation, and to ensure that adequate space remains for the maintenance of the structure and help maintain a consistent neighborhood form and character. The proposed 1.64 meter setback provides room to maintain building separation, road safety, and neighborhood character. The Area C Advisory Planning Commission met on June 29th to discuss the application. The APC supported the development variance permit application due to minimal encroachment into the required rear yard setback and because there will be no adverse effects on neighbors or on snow shedding. Please be advised that all adjacent properties within 50 meters of the subject parcel were notified via mail of the variance request and have been given the opportunity to comment prior to the application going forward to the Electoral Area Services Committee for consideration. Staff received one comment in support of the application from an adjacent owner. The property owner's friend, Tim McGiffin, is in attendance on behalf of the applicant, Ed Lovegrove, and is available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Director Arbor.
Thanks. I call it one of those that oops file, which does happen under what this quite less than a meter. And I would like to say that it's always appreciated by the directors when you get a supportive comment from a neighbor. So I always dread it when I open those files because you never know if it's going to be negative or positive. And in this case, I think the adjacent neighbor was right. It's minimal impact. So in favor of the variance.
Director Grieve.
Might say something on this, Mr. Chair. The chair of my APC is no stranger to Mount Washington. He actually used to run the joint for quite a while. And you know, we talk about snow loading and the peculiar building requirements up there. I mean, it's pretty astounding that more of these don't come before us. But yeah, I think that it's entirely reasonable. The one thing I did show at my APC though with Cassie was that she thinks in metric and we all think in imperial. So remember that. So it's only 3 inches or something, right? No, it's so many centimeters. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions or comments from the directors at this time. We'll provide an opportunity for the public to provide any comments in regards to the application. Anybody in the room or via the Zoom meeting? If you're wanting to come up to the podium, here's your chance. Not seeing or hearing of anybody. We'll provide an opportunity for the applicant, if they so wish, to come up to the podium and provide any further feedback on the application if they like. Looks like the applicant's happy, so we'll move into vote on receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried.
Second.
Oh, sorry, there is one piece of correspondence.
move the correspondence that's in the body.
Thank you. All in favor? There. Thanks. Now we're moving to the recommendation. Thank you. All in favor, carried. Vote on recommendation. All in favor, carried. Number 8. All in favor, carried. Thanks. So report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Alana Mullally, General Manager of Planning and Development Services, will introduce this staff report, and I believe applicants are on the line as well. So Alana, over to you.
Thanks very much, James. Through the chair to the directors, Robin and I are going to tag team this one. The purpose of this report is twofold. The first part is to bring forward to you an application that's been made by Union Bay Estates to modify the floodplain setback to accommodate the proposed Discovery Center building, which is a commercial building. And secondly, to recommend the next phase of work for Union Bay in implementing the coastal flood adaptation strategy, which we suggest will assist you as directors in considering development proposals in Union Bay on the coastline in the near term. Lisa's brought up map number 80, and this is mapping that was undertaken through the initial phases of the coastal flood adaptation strategy, and it includes the subject property in the sort of the southwesterly portion of the map. I'll speak to it a little bit in a moment. So ultimately, the applicant is proposing to construct a commercial building on the 7-hectare property, and the preferred building location is entirely within the estimated coastal floodplain limit to the design year 2100. And that, you'll recall, accounts for sea level rise per the provincial requirements. So anytime construction is proposed within 100 meters of the sea, our floodplain bylaw and the provincial guidelines require applicants to obtain the advice of a professional engineer to prescribe a flood construction level. So that's the height that the habitable area must be in order to be protected from those floodwaters, and to prescribe a floodplain setback that are required in order to render the building safe for the intended use, which in this case is commercial. So as such, the applicant has retained an engineer and submitted this application to you to modify the floodplain setback and including some recommendations from the engineer. Citing the development plans for the balance of the property. So I'll just bring you back. This is a 7-hectare property, which is part of the Union Bay Estates overall development proposal. So citing the balance of the property as a limiting factor in the related development plans, as well as the preferred size and orientation of this building, the engineer has prescribed a setback of 30 meters, as well as a series of mitigation measures that need to be in place. The mitigation measures include the installation of 2 wave barriers, and these have been coined as such by the engineer to protect the building from flood hazard. The report does not include an analysis of the impact of the proposed wave barriers on the adjacent lands, or told us anything about how the proposed wave barriers in this building may relate to the overall plan for the development of the site in respect to coastal flood protection. The provincial guidelines do provide a pathway for local government to allow a modified setback in instances where there is a serious hardship and there is no other reasonable option available to the local government in considering a location for a building. So I won't read you the whole thing, certainly, but at the bottom of page 3 and on to page 4 of the staff report, I've included the excerpt that speaks to hardship and the parameters that have been set by the province for local government to consider requests to modify setbacks along the coast. One serious hardship, of course, which is in play in the examples that were just brought to you, the previous 2 applications requesting the floodplain setback, would be when the entire property is located within the 2100-year flood extent and there are no other options within the parcel. So staff suggests to you that this presently 7-hectare parcel does contain land outside of the flood extent where a building could be sited. And so that's all of the land that is in gray on the subject property. Very difficult, I suppose, to see, but the white lines are, the white lines are property lines in this instance. So there is some land on this 7-hectare parcel in which to construct a building that would not require a modification of the setback. And so for staff at this time, given the orientation of the parcel, it is difficult to suggest that this constraint, which is identified as hardship with the provincial guideline, it is difficult for staff within the parameters that are set by the province to suggest that a serious hardship exists. Before I hand it over to Robin to talk about the second part of the report, or in the two recommendations in the report, I'll note that the applicants made a building permit application for this building in 2019, and they later submitted an engineer's report that spoke to the flood construction level for this building, but not the setback. The building permit has been kept alive. We would normally, building permits normally have a 2-year expiry, but this one's been kept alive, and that's because the owner has been working towards fulfilling the obligations of the master development agreement, including obtaining a form and character development permit for this building that has been issued, and they have dedicated required parkland to the CVRD, some of which is seaward of the proposed wave barriers. The building permit has not yet been issued. I would just like to note in respect to the timing of the building permit, yes, it came in December of 2019, and these flood guidelines set by the province came into effect January 1st of 2018. So they've always been in play. And with that, I'd just like to hand it over to Robin to speak to the two recommendations within the report. Thank you.
Through the CEO to the directors, I'm going to take some time to walk through some of the work we've been working on in terms of the coastal flood adaptation strategy, and specifically more about the implementation that we are now embarking on. As you know, we've been in the process of working on this adaptation strategy since 2018. It was prompted by the amendments that Alana spoke of to the provincial flood hazard area land use guidelines in 2018. And this was to account for climate change and sea level rise in flood management in BC. So we've been working to get a better understanding of our coastal flood hazards and risks in the electoral areas. And we've done this through completing our coastal flood hazard mapping, as well as undertaking a comprehensive flood hazard and risk assessment, as well as an option analysis. And now that this work is complete, we are in the stage of implementing coastal flood adaptation strategy. We call it CFAS. And implementation is multi-layered. And we know that it will include developing a variety of policy and decision-making tools, as well as further adaptation and site-specific mitigation projects. So I'm just going to walk through a couple of well, actually a few of the ways that we are approaching implementation. The first is an update to our regulatory framework, and this is to incorporate the results from the coastal floodplain mapping. The flood construction levels and the setbacks will be updated to reflect the 2100 flood scenario. And this accounts for sea level rise and storm surge. And we are preparing these bylaw updates along with developing tools to support decision makers and planners for land use management and flood hazard areas. And this includes a risk tolerance policy that is based on hazard acceptability thresholds, as well as an application guide. So staff will be working in partnership with the engineers and geoscientists of BC to develop this hazard acceptability threshold for development approvals. And this will guide these development approval decisions and land use planning in hazardous areas. This will explore what is acceptable risk, the type of development, and these possible remedial or protective measures that are required in order for that development to occur safely. Another piece of work is we are about to embark on the third phase of CFAS, and that will happen this fall. And we'll be focusing on adaptation and mitigation planning for Comox Road. We have received grant funding from UBCM to undertake this next phase. And this area was identified as high risk because of the substantial impacts and the complexity of a multi-jurisdictional context in this area and its assets. This project will also focus on increasing the awareness of flood hazards, risk, and adaptation approaches. This is a really good example of an area that has been identified as a priority area, and further study will be done to identify the recommended strategies in order to protect flooding to the road, as well as emergency preparedness for this area. And lastly, the next piece of implementation that the CBRD is working on is a coastal mitigation project at the Dyke Road. Staff are working in partnership with the Comox Guardians as well as the Stewardship Center for BC. Supported by the foundational work of CPAS Phase 1 and 2, the CBRD has been working with coastal engineers to further study this area, and this has included modeling and a geomorphology assessment in order to identify the correct coastal management strategies for this stretch of shoreline. The CBRD has applied to UBCM to undertake this work for funding in order to take a nature-based approach to flood management and build coastal resiliency in this area. So for the CBRD, successful adaptation and flood management will need to involve a combination of policy, planning, and site-specific measures in order to build upon our existing framework. The foundation work has been completed, and now we're in the stages where we can use this. And the recommendations that were included in this report really fit well with the implementation approach we are taking. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Robin. Danny?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the presentation, although I mean, I'm just a little bit confused because we have two recommendations that relate to our broader strategy around the coastal floodplain, but at the bottom of the report, the actual report on page 5 and 6, there's options presented to the board, which are permit the applicant's proposed modified floodplain sandbags subject to the owners. I'm not quite sure what we'll be voting on. And I don't understand why we're mixing two items like that. One being around them proceeding with the specific building, and then the other, which is generally dealt with through long range planning and the rest of that. I'm confused what we're doing.
Maybe I can try quickly, but I know Alana's probably got a better answer for me. So this particular application is about the floodplain exemption for the Discovery Center. And staff are not, because of the language around the requirement for hardship to be presented to consider an exemption to the floodplain requirements. As Alana explained, there is buildable land within this particular lot. So staff are not able to recommend that an exemption be permitted. That said, it is up to the board to make that determination, and the board could authorize an exemption to the floodplain requirements. And that's the language you see in the options on, as you said, page 5 and 6. This application in particular has driven that consideration for a larger look at the coastal floodplain adaptation strategy. And so that's why you're seeing this broader concept, this broader consideration brought into this particular staff report. Alana, did I capture that?
It's through the chair to the directors. Yeah, that's it, James. And we know that this applicant has been working on this building for a long time, right? Feeling that they've made their building permit application, they've obtained the development permit for the proposed building. And so I think it's reasonable that they're expecting a decision and knowing where they stand on the status of that building permit. And this is the piece that really they need in order to move forward. And to echo James's piece, we're just at the point where we've got this 7-hectare parcel. There is a concurrent application to the Minister of Transportation that the owner has made that would see this new parcel created that would be entirely within the flood extent on which this building would be situated. But until that time, there is buildable area outside. So yes, the report doesn't provide you a recommendation, but does provide you an option on this application, which would be number one, you could certainly proceed, allow the modified setback. And in that case, we would request that you proceed in the normal manner, which would be to obtain a covenant registered on a restricted covenant registered on the title of the property, which would include the engineer's report, an acknowledgement that no disaster financial assistance would be available, and a clause that we hope would indemnify the CBRD against any future flooding claims. The second option certainly would be for you to request the applicant to provide additional information. That information could be, for example, what is their overall plan for providing coastal adaptation planning on the property, a flood protection strategy for the balance of the property, or certainly 3, you could deny the application with with the knowledge that there are other uses that may be able to be cited within the portion of the property that is within the flood extent.
Daniel? Yeah, thanks. I guess I'm seeing this one a little bit differently than staff. I don't understand why we're not issuing the building permit on it. It's gone through the APC in 2019. It's been kept alive. We have received a ton of community contributions from the developer tied to this, including parks dedication. If I go back a number of years, we've also received monies for affordable housing. We've received monies for transit. So the developer just keeps putting in. And on this one, this board knows very well, I've been one of the biggest sponsor of our climate and floodplain adaptation work and floodplain mapping and the rest of that. We also have to be reasonable in the sense that this building permit has been I don't know why it hasn't been executed. I really don't. I know there were conditions that have been, that as far as I understand, are mostly met or fully met. And the second part, I guess, how I see it different is this is one building on a site that's going to have multiple commercial and units and otherwise, and some live-in or whatnot. So this is the C3, I guess, C3 or C4, C3. So obviously the developer has to know that there's going to be a range of requirements to meet the floodplain to protect the entire site. I don't disagree with staff on that. But to hold back an initial building, to me, I don't get it, because we will need to do the work on the rest of the property and as others. But this has been life. You know, we all often talk about issuing building permits and development permits. This one has been in the works for 4 years, right? 4 years with this building permit. It's gone through the APC, it's gone through all the steps. The developer has met our requirements. I really think we should just not put up blockades at every turn and let this one go through, and then do the work around comprehensively understanding how the rest of the development in that area, both to protect that building and other buildings, will need to occur.
I can just quickly respond to that. I think Director, certainly the staff are very enthused in working with the developer to understand that overall context and how the overall development and the floodplain adaptations need to work together. This would be the first building on that particular property, and so it's important to understand that context of the first building in light of any sort of improvements or floodplain adaptation infrastructure that goes in. And the report does offer you, the directors, the elected officials, the option to approve this floodplain exemption, but also then continue that work of the floodplain adaptation strategy. So if the directors are interested in supporting this particular exemption, then the wording in the staff report on pages 5 and 6 is there. We would ask you to also consider the recommendations 1 and 2 that would proceed with that coastal adaptation work overall, the broader context.
Thanks. I think to my fellow directors, what I would like to see happen is that we see something happen, that we see this initial building, which has been in the works for 4 years, proceed, that we don't vote on the other 2 recommendations until we see some work actually happen. And that's just, I mean, we got a 5-minute presentation. To be honest, I think before I vote on the other one, I think we're going to need a much more fulsome understanding of not only that area, but all other areas along the, because we do grant, like at Saratoga and other places, we have granted a number of exemptions, and we haven't triggered that kind of broader thing for them. So I don't understand why we're trying to pack it all into one meeting when there's known frustration around our rate of response to get something to the developer after we continue to receive amenities on this. So that would be my preference, that we just vote to let this proceed, understanding that at a later date, we will need to have that comprehensive look at the floodplain mitigation. For me, I would just vote on the exemption for today. Thanks.
If I could ask one question of staff. Certainly the decision to proceed with the recommendations or the option is at the electoral area's committee's discretion. Can you speak to if the recommendations are supported as well as the option one, the building permit then and the development of the Discovery Center, would that be held up, or would that be prohibited from proceeding, given that the board supports moving ahead with that coastal flood protection strategy?
Through the chair to the directors. So this is one of the final pieces that's needed to issue that building permit. And to be really clear, this isn't a building permit that's been sitting waiting for review. This was reviewed a long time ago. There were a number of pieces that needed to be delivered by the applicant in order to be able to issue. So the building permit, the engineer's report that's in front of you includes some recommendations around some geotechnical work that I expect will need to be done. So I assume that the applicant will do that in short order, provide that to us on the design of the building, as the risk mitigation strategies that are included in this report, and then that would be the end of it for the building permit review, provided that those assurances, pardon me, are made by the engineer. And then on the latter piece of the work, yeah, if your interest is not for us to do that at this time, then certainly, then we won't do that at this time. We have other work that we can do that Robin has spoken to.
Yeah, thanks. I would appreciate taking that course, because my next thing, when I first read the report, I was like, well, maybe we should give back the parks to the developer, right? If we keep stalling and not the rest of it, like when they keep meeting requirements. So I think we're obviously the regulator. This is work that will need to be done, but we also need to show movement. And so I appreciate that staff could work with just us providing the exemption today and coming back at a later date to have that comprehensive look at what's going to be needed for not only that C3 zone, but also a number of other zones across the regional districts that we need to look at, which will have an impact on the future of our 2 settlement nodes along the ocean. Thanks.
I'll just add one more piece to that. I think that subsequent work will be important to undertake and in a fairly timely fashion, given the development interests and development activities. So yeah, staff would look to come back in, I won't say short order, but fairly soon, so that we don't miss the opportunity to take a look at that broader coastal flood protection strategy.
I do see that representatives from Univa's properties are online. We'll provide an opportunity for you to provide some more feedback here.
Yes, Chair. Hello, my name is Kerry of Architect 57, and representing the client, Kensington Union Bay Property Nominees Limited. First of all, I want to thank CBRE has been working closely with us on the report. And second, we really appreciate just hearing the committee directors understanding how long process this project has been going on. And since the city did mention some really critical points about this potential other location within this property that we can build this particular discovery centers, I would like to turn the microphone to our engineer, Brian Lacasse. He actually has a little bit more information to share with the committee. Brian, here you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. I'm Brian Lacasse. I'm a senior flood control engineer and president of Lacasse Consultants, Inc., which is part of the LCI engineering group. Currently, this site is east of the Island Highway. It's a vacant coal industrial site. It also has many historical piles of soil and debris, and there's no existing seawalls on the property. The LCI group has determined the flood construction level based on a climate change sea level rise for year 2100. With the maximum high tide, storm surge, and we also used specific wave design analysis that was not in the original regional study based on the location, proposed location of the Discovery Center. Besides determining the flood construction level for the center, we also have designed 2 temporary wave barriers. And in my professional opinion, the current location for the proposed Discovery Center with the recommended flood construction level, along with the 2 wave barriers I mentioned, is both suitable and safe for the use intended for the Discovery Center and also the community. The wave barriers provide protection to the Discovery Center, the highway, and other lands of the community. Since the wave barriers will be removed as the development proceeds, there will be no anticipated future obligations of the CVRD and other agencies. So we stand behind it, and any of the higher lands that are shown on the drawings appear upon my site investigation and review, is that there's been a lot of manipulation historically of soil and coal and debris on the site. And these areas are not suitable for development of the Discovery Center. And if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Thank you, Brian. So Chair and directors, please feel free to ask any questions.
Not seeing any questions at this time. Thank you. Oh, we do, just a moment here. Director Arbor?
Thanks. I understand everyone is trying to, so the question I have for Brian, I guess, is you talked about, and I'm trying to, as you heard me earlier, I'm trying to draw a distinction in my mind between short-term versus long-term needs for protection of that entire set of parcels and other parcels in the area. But when you talk about a temporary wave barrier, and when you talk about the long-term, the wave barrier being replaced, what would be your mitigation measure? Is that a TBD, or that would be to work closely with the staff of the regional district and et cetera, including looking at green shores and other methods to look at full broader site planning? Is that, am I reading this correctly, or is there something else behind it, the removing of the temporary barriers?
No, we would work very closely with the district, and both the wave barriers, the east and the south, as I said, they're temporary in nature. And until the development proceeds on CDA 1 and CDA 3, once these new developments are put on these two areas, and permanent structures are built, the temporary barriers will be disassembled and removed. And and that's what I'm saying. As far as temporary is concerned, they will just blend into or be removed, and development will proceed with the new infrastructure. And one other thing I wanted to add, the temporary barriers will not influence or detrimentally affect the rest of the parcel on which the Discovery Center will be built. And also it doesn't detrimentally affect the adjacent lands. And any other questions?
No, thanks. I mean, staff can put the red flag up if it triggers legal concerns. But for me, it just on concept, we have desire by both parties to address the future impact of ocean rise and storm surges. We know that the property is currently, we're not at 2100. It's currently elevated. We've allowed other buildings at similar elevations to be built. We do that on a constant basis. So I think I don't want to just stop the one building in order to address the larger program of addressing the full site. And I'm wondering, maybe my last question to staff for today is, I guess Alana kind of answered it already by showing some comfort in approving one today and then working together on the long range plan. Is there any guarantees that we would need from staff to make sure that What doesn't happen is that nothing happens, right? That we allow the building and then there's no beyond the wave barriers, that there's no future mitigation. So do we have a mechanism to ensure that that collaboration between the development and ourselves, happens?
Through the chair to the directors, I think what's at play here is the overall order of operations, right? What comes first? So I appreciate the interests of the owner and the applicant to get going. I hear that. And yourself, Director Arbor, for sure. I hear that. I guess a couple of things that Brian Lacasse has raised. I don't, and maybe I'm missing it, just going through really quickly. I don't see any reference to what Brian has just spoken about in the report that has been provided. So I don't see reference to the fact that these are temporary in nature. We would be issuing the building permit on the basis of this report. And so typically a building like this, we would anticipate to have a 50, 75-year lifespan. So I don't know how the removal of the barriers come into play with this. The other thing I don't know is what happens if subdivision is approved by the provincial approving officer. It's fine for staff to say that, of course, we work with applicants. We always work with applicants. This has been a development that's a long time coming. We're keen to see this development happen in the way that the board has approved it. But I can't speak to what the scenario that Mr. Lacasse is shaping for you here. I don't see readily a mechanism that would compel a future owner to do any of these pieces or to work with us or to work with other owners, because there's nothing in this report that speaks to those future scenarios.
Chair, isn't it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think you're right. We just have a slightly different understanding. For me, we've gone through all the steps around this building permit. The coastal floodplain is an additional one, a latecomer, if you will, to the issue. This was not an issue in 2019 or 2021 that we were looking at. And I heard from, and I hear you that not the I's and T's are crossed around the optimal solution, because we need to do that work together. But I hate to be rushed to have to do the two things at once today. I think I would want to see more context and planning around the protection scheme for the area and other areas, right? But first, I would like to see this, what essentially is something that's been sitting in our cooker for 4 years, just move forward. And I realize that everyone will share an interest to protect the buildings that are going to go up in that area, and that buildings may not happen if there is no good solution found. I definitely want to make sure for the other directors that we allow the exemption to proceed today. And the other one, I hate that we're putting in the same item, because it's very rare that we put a longer range planning item along with a development, a development approval, basically.
Any other questions, comments? Sorry, we do have Carrie on. Carrie?
Yes, sir. I would like to add to the conversation to answer Elena's questions. I believe my client has been working on the south portion of the property, is the marina, with the province and the city for many years. We definitely believe by the time those developments completed, they are going to comply with the 2100-year floodplain management plan. So that's also the intent of my clients. While we keep developing the rest of the sites, all the buildings, they will comply to this. And also earlier this year, we did understanding the importance of the flood management plan, and also offer that in the next phase, when we get going with these particular buildings, we're going to complete the entire City Zone 3 floodplain management under the same engineers, and going to show that to the city CBRDs. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions or comments. We are in vote to receive the report. All in favor? Carry. Moving to recommendation number 1. Director Arbor?
No, I don't want to move recommendation number 1. I would like to go in the staff report and move 1 on page 5. Just a second, I'm just pulling it up. Would like to move option 1, which is permit the applicant's proposed modified floodplain setback subject to the owner registering a covenant on the property's land title, which outlines the requirement for a post-development report prior to use occupancy, acknowledges that no disaster financial assistance funding is available, and identifies the severity from liability in the event of damage caused by flooding or erosion. Yeah, and then the ensuing clauses.
So just the first paragraph.
No.
Stop that erosion.
Directors, if you're interested in option 1, the wording that it's on the screen there that starts with that site-specific engineer's prescription, et cetera, the 2 clauses there that be put forward as wording for a resolution that would deliver on option 1. So on the screen, Director Arbor at the top there, that site-specific engineer's prescription, et cetera.
Yeah. What is the suggestion? Sorry.
If the committee wants to proceed with option 1, which would be the exemption of the floodplain requirements, they put forward the wording that's on the screen here. That site-specific engineer's prescription for the siting of a proposed commercial building, discovery center, et cetera, all the way down to the bottom of B and finally that clause.
Okay, yeah. So okay, I'm prepared to move that.
Good with that?
Yep.
All in favor? Carry. So, time out?
Break time?
Yes.
Sure. We do still have some more folks here.
Folks here, I just
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
We'll come back. Thanks. So we're finished with Union Bay Estates then?
I'm just gonna double check. I don't get back off.
So James has a subsequent he would like to come forward with.
Thank you,
There's the
Mr. Chair.
options.
Just in follow-up to the previous discussion around the floodplain exemption request. Staff report did include two recommendations. One to initiate that coastal flood protection strategy. And then secondly, prepare a board policy to guide the board's review and decision-making. I would like to ask the board to consider, or the Electoral Area Services Committee to consider referring those matters to staff so that we can come back with a more fulsome staff report that would describe that process of work, that volume of work that we would want to come back with. This referral and the subsequent staff report, it would not prevent or delay or impact on the Discovery Center building permit construction process itself. They could be very much done concurrently. I think now is an opportune time to consider these two more broad recommendations, given the amount of work that we do expect to see coming through the Union Bay Estates project. And yes, it is somewhat odd to see this more broad strategic approach included in a particular application. But like I said, it's the nature of this particular project that does prompt that broader consideration. So I do appreciate that the directors may want to see a more fulsome report that introduces this work and talks about the pros and cons and the process itself. And so if the committee's interested, we would appreciate a referral to staff to come back with that more fulsome staff report at a subsequent Electoral Areas Committee meeting.
Director.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I could give consideration to recommendation one, maybe not two. It might be good to first see a report on a geomorphological assessment, and then have a discussion on that, and then provide feedback on what board policies could look like, and then board policy later on. The second piece is for recommendation one. I would like to see for Union Bay and the Saratoga area, so that we cover both settlement nodes, and that maybe this report be prepared for, I don't know what timeline staff would like, but it can be as long as a year from now or something like that if staff wants to comment. But I don't know why we would just target Union Bay when we have two settlement nodes that are prone to storm surge and ocean rise.
I could let Robin speak to the why the focus on Union Bay. I believe it is because of the development and interest and activities in this particular area. But Robin, if you want to add to that aspect. As to the referral of recommendation one and or two as well, I think the staff would be able to come back and it can be an iterative process with the EASC where we would be reporting on what we find. We would be presenting that process, and then the committee would be able to provide subsequent direction after that. But Robin, do you want to speak to the Union Bay and Saratoga approach being combined?
Through James to the directors. I think what's different about the Union Bay area, like this as a focus area, it's different. It's unique in the sense that there isn't development already there. So it does provide an opportunity to try and avoid the flood prone areas, as well as being very mindful when looking at lot configuration. There's ways to try and avoid. And that's different from Saratoga. Saratoga's an existing community. It's got legacy subdivision. And so those are the kinds of the challenges that we're dealing with are different there. It's not to say that it can't be done, but in terms of finding a consultant that can actually take on this work and using the work that's already been complete, we know there's going to be additional study that needs to be done. We've been referencing these geomorphological assessments. Essentially, that's just a fancy way of saying they need to identify what stretches of shoreline need to be looked at. And then it could be multiple stretches of shoreline that are included in this flood protection strategy, and each stretch might have to be looked at, and the measures that would be implemented would be different. One area might have to have a combination of hard armoring, and some of that shoreline might have to have a soft erodible shoreline. So it's really important that we do this study piece, and then we can work to provide, I think, direction to be able to say this is what we are looking for in this area. And so that's why we're recommending that it be done in advance or and concurrently to support that work. And I think what we're really trying to avoid are these ad hoc sort of decisions where they have to be made. We really want to be able to provide something comprehensive so decisions can be done consistently and have that guidance. And that was the intent of trying to provide those tools, that idea of the hazard acceptability threshold. That's really to be able to identify what makes sense and looking at that type of development and then looking at those kinds of measures that can be put in to reduce that risk. So to answer your question, I think that they could be done, but I think in terms of what we're hearing from capacity with consultants, it's probably prudent for us just to take one at a time and just recognize that the challenges are going to be different.
Yeah, even if it takes longer, I think I like what you said around not having an ad hoc approach. And what I do know, as per the facts, is that pretty much all the floodplain exemptions along the seashore that we have provided are have been in Saratoga for the last 2 years. And I think if we're going to get to step 2 eventually this term, to create a board policy, I would like to us be able to have done a deep dive on 2 areas that, you are correct, are quite different. But in there's a lot of active floodplain exemption that are happening at Saratoga. So, and I think we're going to learn from having a built environment versus a greenfield. If we do the 2 at once, that will lead to better policy that covers both scenarios. So I would move that we move recommendation with the addition of Saratoga area if Dr. Grieve especially is in support and sees the merit of taking that approach.
There's no simple. Well, I guess I was kind of wondering.
No, I think so prior to the break, the EASC did approve option 1 in the staff report. And now it is considering Director Arbor's motion just put forward now to support recommendation 1 that's on the screen here with the addition of Saratoga in that flood protection strategy. I think we're looking for a seconder.
Agree.
I'm in favor of moving whatever expedites this thing forward. I think, more and more, there's ever increasing permitting regulations, mitigation requiring more and more professional reports, et cetera, et cetera. I know that this wasn't even dreamed of in the philosophies of Union Bay Estates, because times move on and it never gets easier. It gets more and more complicated. So I would think that I would be in favor of just deferring the second part for a later discussion. We don't need to bring it back right away. So your suggestion would be then to just also include the Saratoga in this as well, which would with no timeline per se. So we can, okay, so I will support that because like I say, I mean, we're talking about, in an earlier item on the agenda about, identifying a ditch as maybe a fish bearing ditch, and I would suggest that what I've seen over the last 10 years is that the ditches themselves are dry. The streams are dry. So a lot of our information is outdated. So we need something more fulsome, especially with the coastal flood mapping. We've got a lot of the bare data now. We can move on it. But yeah, I think I'm okay with not dealing with the Union Bay in isolation. So I would support that. Thank you.
So we have a second. All in favor on receipt? Carried. Yeah, and that's on recommendation number 1. Now we're going to vote. All in favor? Oh, sorry. I thought we were in receipt. We hadn't done a vote yet. Okay. Fair enough. We've completed the task. Woohoo. All right, so
I would move 9.
moving to number 9.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Second.
Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm pleased to introduce Stephanie Pollock, planner, who will be introducing this staff report and the following 2 staff reports, all development variance permit DV 3B23. So Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. Through the acting CAO to the chair and committee members, this is a development variance permit application to increase the maximum height for an accessory building being a detached shop from 7 meters to 7.55 meters. The subject property is located at 2100 June Road, is approximately 1.04 hectares in size, and is zoned residential 1. The applicant received a building permit in 2022 to construct the accessory building. The applicant indicated that the reason for the increase in height is to accommodate storing their boat in a safe and secure location, which could not fit within the 7-meter height restriction. Additionally, it was not possible to lower the foundation any further on account of an existing septic line tie-in. The building has already been constructed, and the application is accompanied by confirmation from a surveyor of the 7.55 meter height of the structure. Planning staff are in support of this application because the additional 0.55 meters is not likely to alter the rural form and character of the area or generate any privacy concerns to or from the property, given that the building is located approximately 8.8 meters from the neighboring property. The Area B Advisory Planning Commission considered this application on May 29th, 2023, and they are supportive of the application. Adjacent owners within a 100-meter radius have been notified. As of today, staff have received 0 responses. I will note that the applicant and property owner, Bryce Hanson, is in attendance today, and I am happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Any questions? At this opportunity, we'll provide an opportunity again for the public to provide any comments or feedback on the application. Is there anybody in the room or online that would like to provide comments? Not seeing any. Would the applicant like to provide any further information or comments to the committee? Not seeing any. Then I guess we're moving to receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried.
Is there the addendum? No addendum?
No addendums to minute.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Vote on recommendation. All in favor? Carried. And item number 10. We're looking at development variance permits for 381 Winton Road.
And again, over to Stephanie.
Thank you. Through the acting CAO to the chair and committee members, this is a development variance permit application to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3.6 meters for the existing single detached dwelling for the construction of a proposed deck. The deck has not been constructed yet. The subject property is located at 381 Winton Road, is approximately 0.22 hectares in size, and is zoned country residential 1. This single detached dwelling received a building permit in 2020. At the time that the building permit was issued, the zoning bylaw defined lot lines differently. As such, the lot line under consideration was not deemed to be the rear yard lot line at that time. It was deemed to be the side yard lot line, which prescribes a setback of 3.5 meters. As such, the dwelling was cited compliantly at that time. Amendment number 3 to the zoning bylaw passed August 10th, 2021, which changed the lot line definition.
Under the updated and present definition, the lot line under consideration is the rear yard setback, which has a minimum setback of 7.5 meters. As such, the applicant opted to apply for a variance as the deck addition would match the existing siting of the building as per the building permit. Planning staff are in support of this application because the variance is not likely to alter the form and character of the neighborhood, increase privacy issues, or make maintenance of the building more difficult. The Area A Advisory Planning Commission considered this application on June 12th, 2023, and they are supportive of the application. Adjacent owners within a 100-meter radius have been notified. As of today, staff have received one response expressing support from the directly adjacent neighbor to the rear property line under consideration, and one response requesting additional information regarding privacy concerns, which has been responded to. I will note that the property owners, Kelvin and Lori Chan, are in attendance today, and I can answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Director Arbor. Yeah, once again, thanks for the good report and the applicant as well for going through the process. And I'll reiterate what I said earlier, always good when you see some support from the neighbors for applications. So I'm definitely in favor of proceeding with this variance.
Not seeing any further questions from the directors. Again, this is development variance permit, so we provide an opportunity for public to provide comments on the application. Any comments or questions from the public in the room or via the Zoom? Not seeing any. We also provide an opportunity here to allow the applicants to provide any further comments or feedback if they so choose to come to the podium. Looks like the applicants are comfortable. So I guess we're on voter receipt of the report. Can I get somebody to move on that? All in favor? Carried.
Move correspondence to receive.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we're moving on to, are we going to have a break or are we going to continue moving on here? Carry on?
One more.
Okay. Great.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Item number 11.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried.
And again, Stephanie Pollock is here to introduce the staff report on the telecommunication antenna system proposal at 1351 Larkin Road. Stephanie.
Through the acting CAO to the chair and committee members, a proposal has been received by staff from Rogers Communications about their intent to construct a 63-meter tall telecommunications tower on the property at 1351 Larkin Road. The subject property is 31.75 hectares in size and is zoned Rural Agricultural Land Reserve, as it is in the Agricultural Land Reserve. Per Board Policy P89, the Telecommunication Antenna System Application and Consultation Process Policy, the first step is for staff to draft a report to the directors in order to introduce the proposal prior to the commencement of any public engagement. Staff have assessed the application for preliminary consistency with the board policy. The public engagement will involve presentations to the Electoral Area C and Agricultural Advisory Planning Commissions, as well as a public information meeting for affected residents of the neighborhood. The proposed online public information meeting will be advertised in 2 issues of the Comox Valley Record, and letters with information about the proposal and meeting will be sent to all property owners and tenants within a 500-meter radius of the subject property. The applicant, Brian Gregg of SitePath Consulting, should be available for questions over Zoom. Thank you.
Director Grieve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's true to Brian. This is just the kickoff of the whole usual Three Ming Circus coming up. So we have we sent out any of the notices to the neighborhood yet?
Through the chair, Director Grieve, no, we haven't commenced the process whatsoever, publicly speaking. So this is really just, as Stephanie noted, the initial kickoff here, introducing it through your committee and the directors before we get to that point in the process.
Okay, and we're quite familiar with the process. So thank you very much for coming before us. Look forward to seeing how this one pans out. Thank you.
Thanks.
Director I guess this is just to staff. There's no recommendation for us to do anything on this one.
John, do you want to respond to that, please?
Through the chair to Director Arbor, no, there's no recommendation. This is just information just to start off, just to inform the committee that we do have this application coming forward and that the applicant is intending to start off the engagement. Just to allow the directors to be informative that they may get phone calls or inquiries to staff and to the directors.
Okay, thanks. I would just note, I mean, that's just for feedback for Brian and the team, that it seems like we've had a number of applications that, you know, there has been public processes and recommendation to locate those towers in different areas of properties that are may not be right adjacent the road to another property. Like I just feel like I don't understand why on first brush this site is chosen, other than probably the ease of servicing. But I can already anticipate some community feedback that I think could have been avoided by a different site location. So, but as Director Grieve said, I guess there'll be a process, and here we go around cell towers again. Thanks.
Through the chair, would it be helpful if I briefly respond to that, or just let it be?
By all means.
Okay, thanks. So I think it's showing on your screen right now. There's portions of the property, if you go further in, where there's a water course and some, I believe, development permit areas that we've just tried to be respectfully set back from. And then there's always the trade-off of, while we recognize that large setbacks are a good idea where they're feasible, the trade-off is often basically building roads and power lines and utility structures deeper into either forested land or agricultural land. So there's potentially some merit to set larger setbacks, but also some trade-offs. And, you know, so therein becomes a discussion of what's the right balance. What we've tried to do here is there is a reasonable setback, and we're close to basically existing utilities and an access road. Certainly, there might be an opportunity to amend this a little bit, but I'm not sure how far we could go without beginning to infringe upon some of those ecological features that I think are noted in your map there, for example.
Great.
I won't belabor this because we're just on the first step here, but so what is the service area we're looking at? It looks like the Williams Beach and probably some of the southern portion of the Miracle Beach, Saratoga area as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because there is issues there. Thank you.
All right, we're voting on receipt of the report. All in favor? Okay. Do we move into item number 12? Carried.
And yeah, Amanda Yazinski, Senior Manager of Bio Compliance and Building Services, I believe, will introduce this staff report. So Amanda, over to you.
Good afternoon through the chair. So this report is to provide an overview of the existing parameters for regulating construction noise through the existing noise bylaw, as well as the limitations on regulating vibrations associated with mechanic customary to construction noise. And comes as a follow-up to correspondence received at the January 30th, 2023 Electoral Area Services Committee. Correspondence was received that requested amendments to the existing noise bylaw relating to noise and construction to manage vibrations. This correspondence is attached to this report as Appendix B. At the same meeting, staff was directed to report back with options regarding possible regulatory measures related to noise and vibrations emanating from machinery during construction. The current noise bylaw, bylaw number 102, being the Electoral Areas Noise Control Regulations bylaw, does regulate construction noise. Specifically, the bylaw regulates construction noise through exemptions and with set timeframes. Noise generated through construction may occur between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. on any day except Sunday. Essentially, no noise before 7 and no noise after 9 p.m. related to construction noise. Sundays, that would be before 9 a.m. and after 9 p.m. The Comox Valley Regional District has the authority to establish a general service for noise control under Section 323 of the Local Government Act. The Act specifies in what way a regional district may apply a noise bylaw within their jurisdictions. There is no direct mechanism granted to a regional district that would allow the regulation of vibrations that are associated with noise from machinery or equipment used commonly during construction. We are limited to noise or sounds that tend to disturb the quiet peace, rest, enjoyment, comfort, or convenience of the neighborhood, but not vibration. The current noise bylaw has been used successfully through noise complaints in relation to construction. It is very rare, and I can't think of a single occurrence where we've ticketed for construction noise that has continued after the operators or property owners, contractors have been notified of the noise bylaw. The noise bylaw is consistent with our neighboring municipalities and with municipalities across British Columbia. The set timeframes allow trades and contractors to do the work, as well as property owners, as well as the neighboring property owners to know what to expect as the timeframes are set out through the noise bylaw. This particular correspondence came from one development down on Clarkson Avenue and Black Creek. And we have worked with the contractors there to try to mitigate what was coming from that noise complaint. Unfortunately, in this case, it was vibrations that were not able to be detected by more than one individual in the neighborhood, and we were not able to apply a bylaw through the regional district to assist in that complaint. And I can answer any questions on this one.
Director Green. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Amanda. Yeah, I remember this case quite vividly. Now, I guess the issue is operating, even if you're operating a compactor, and believe me, I've been walking around behind one quite a lot lately because I'm doing a little addition to my shop. They obviously project. They're obviously, you know, a sound wave at a much lower frequency. So that it could be argued that vibration is sound. But were they operating between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m.? Were they operating outside normal noise bylaw hours? I can't recall.
Through the chair, what was running were heating fans to drive the internal construction units. I believe it was at the drywall stage to keep the
kerosene fans. I mean, kerosene heaters.
Yeah.
The big blowers.
So there was not necessarily any audible noise, even for residents that were right up against that development.
And it was running all night. Yeah. So That's a tough one. It really is, but there must be some way they could mitigate a little bit on that. I don't know. Do other jurisdictions run up against this issue? I would imagine in some of the more densely populated urban areas, it might be more of this kind of complaint driven.
Yeah, so when there's noise through construction, if there's noise present, that we need a violation, something has to occur for a bylaw violation to occur. So with the absence of any noise that can be measured or audible by staff or residents in the area, vibration in itself is not something that can be enforced. If someone's operating equipment or they were in there running power tools after the hours, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if that does sometimes in the heat, certain firms will try to start a bit earlier. And if we're made aware through complaint, we address that immediately. Not so often people run past 9 o'clock unless there's an emergency that's occurred. We've had people with basements flooding over the years, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they're usually one-offs and they're addressed right away.
So I guess our best path forward is to actually engage the construction company when it's occurring and see if we can find some mitigation on it, some way of toning it down or enclosing it or shrouding it or whatever. So, but so it's just the blowers themselves. Yeah, but you see that, of course, if you got drywall drying, you pretty well need it. So understood. But yeah, so what you're saying basically is there's no precedent for this. It's much like the fellow that kept ringing the bell all hours, the church bell day and night, you know, where we couldn't really do too much because it wasn't part of the bylaw. It wasn't in there as church bell ringing. Okay, thanks very much.
Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I have two questions. One is, I actually forget, I'm sure we've covered that before, but are our times consistent with that of our local municipalities in terms of construction noise, or are we more or less permissive?
Through the chair, the times are consistent with our neighboring municipalities. Some municipality has a little bit more ability and restrictions on many bylaws. Noise is one of them, but they are consistent with our neighboring municipalities and further outreaching as well, not just from a valley point of view. We always try to gain compliance. It's a start time. We remind. We had a site recently that had delivery. There was some backup beepers. It was well before the 7 a.m. start. We let them know the neighbors did hear that. It was a one-off. We always try to work with compliance. This particular file, the contractor did try to build barriers, that kind of thing, rubber mats down to reduce those vibrations. And it didn't apparently make any difference, but they did try to when they were aware, and that was above and beyond what was required through the bylaw. They were trying.
Can I ask why was this an unusual project where the amount of vibration, like were they like chipping away at bedrock, or like is it a unique situation, or is it a normal situation but that had more impact on the one household?
Through the chair, it was actually our first vibration complaint that I can recall, other than the plate packers sometimes throughout the day will get calls on, but they're within the set. It's just the noise and the vibration. But this is the first time we've had just a vibration complaint of any kind. It was not unusual work, but they are rental fans, sometimes propane, kerosene, sometimes they're ran by a generator, and they're used to take up the humidity either at framing stage. The moisture has to get down to a certain point before they can cover it with drywall. And then often once the drywall's up and it's been taped and mudded, they'll use the same fans to pull out moisture and dry as well, so they can then paint. So it's common practice. This is the first time we've had a vibration complaint.
And finally, when it said that regional districts don't seem to have the authority to regulate vibration, do municipalities have that authority? So is that, because there was a mention of the bylaws in Campbell River by the resident who complained. So is there a distinction between regional districts and municipalities on regulations around vibrations?
Specifically through vibrations in municipalities, I did not go that far. What I looked at was our nuisance ability to regulate, which we may not through vibration, and our noise ability as a regional district, but I did not look at what a municipality can. The bylaw quoted through Campbell River quoted timeframes, which are fairly consistent, if not the same as ours.
Okay, well, if a tiny bit more, if it was found by staff that there is a distinction between regional districts and municipality, maybe that's something we could write a letter to look at having a change on that. But otherwise, I see that this report has no recommendation. It's basically just for information. So thanks. I think you have our feedback.
So vote on receipt of report. All in favor? Carried. Item number 13. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Bruce Green, Regional Rural Fire Chief and Fire Chief for Oyster Fire Rescue will introduce this staff report.
Bruce, good to see you, Chief. Thanks.
Good afternoon to the acting CEO, to the chair, to the directors. Back in 2012, we did a administrative review, and one of the things that came from that is we hired the fire chiefs. And from that, we needed financial oversight of how the fire chiefs ran. And so we created agreements with the associations to provide that financial oversight. The staff report in front of you is we're looking to renew the agreement with Devon Island Firefighters Association for the financial oversight of the operating grant. There is a couple changes from the other one. We've got 3 associations. Just echo. 3 associations, and we had all different agreements. So we're trying to bring them all into the same agreement. So there has been the biggest changes. Devon Island was getting payments biannually, where everybody else is getting quarterly. So we're changing to quarterly. Everything else is basically the same, and just we have been working with Devon Island Firefighters Association through the update of this agreement, and they're in agreement with it. With that, I'll open up to questions.
Thanks, Chief. Director Over.
Yeah, thanks. I went through the agreement, and I like that there's also an item, and once a year we'll have a touch base with DERA to review the budgets and the rest of it. So that's good to see. Selection of fire chief, everything's really well fleshed out. Just a minor edit for just a typo, I guess, under item 15. It says indemnity. I think you mean indemnity.
Okay.
Yeah, so just a little flip of the I and the N there for clarity. And yeah, it's good to see the contract in place. And just while we have you here, I don't know if you were here at the meeting, Doug certainly was, but they were talking about the potential in new builds around fire halls to look at affordable housing possibilities. And I don't know if you were there, but they hadn't put Denman on the list. So I suggested maybe we'd want to look at that.
There may be a staff report coming through in August that might be talking about that.
You guys have talked perfect. And then the second piece is I'd like to, while you're here as well, to acknowledge that we've had a retirement of the Fanny Bay Fire Chief a few days ago on July 1st. And if there's any events or like that, anything like that to acknowledge his contributions, I'd be happy to attend. If not, then maybe I'll arrange my own meeting.
I know we have got a presentation to make for Chief Smith with the association. So I'll make sure when that's going to happen to you, that you're included.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Director Green.
Yeah, when's Murphy going to get a ladder truck? Just kidding.
With that being said, I don't see any other questions. Vote on receipt of report. All in favor? Carried.
Approve the recommendation.
Thank you. All in favor? Vote on recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Chief, all your hard work and your teams. All in favor, carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And introducing Mark Harrison, Manager of Parks, to introduce this operational update on the community park services. Mark.
Thank you, James. Through the CEO to through the chair to the directors. Thanks to this report is just basically to present, to inform the directors of the status of the ongoing community parks projects. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So basically for 2023, we have, as outlined in Appendix A of the report, thank you very much. We have 39 priority work plan projects for delivery in 2023. So this doesn't include our ongoing operational work or in-camera works or small minor capital projects. So of those 39, we broke it down into what's not started, what's completed, and what's in progress. So we have completed 9 of those work plan items. Of the 39, 21 are in progress and 9 are not started. So the list, it does show a range of projects and kind of a range of varying complexities of the projects. But I think all in all, I'm quite satisfied with where we're at with our work plan at this time. So just in terms of some of the highlights, I'd like to just touch base with the Lazo Greenway, the Denman Cross Island Trail, the Beach Fire Program, and then some of our 2 key management plans that we're kind of working on delivering. So in terms of the Lazo Greenway, we are continuing to work with the town of Comox and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, as well as our consultant ISL, to try to bring that towards 100% design. As it stands right now, we're still at 90% design. Project costs are estimated to be approximately 1.7 million, and that does include a 10% contingency. The CVRD portion is looking at approximately 950,000 of that 1.7 million. The big capital costs for that are largely because of the trail through the marsh section, and also because we are looking at constructing a parking area as part of this project off of Brent Road. So we still are hoping to tender this project in the fall. Just in terms of impacts from sewer conveyance, I think that project will have minimal impacts because this is a project which is largely separated and off of the road, and the sewer conveyance is within the road dedication itself. So I think that those projects shouldn't be impacting each other. In terms of the Denman Cross Island Trail, we did have a public engagement session on Denman Island on May 13th. And I think that was really well received by the public. We looked at discussed the construction from Owl Crescent to Gravelly Bay ferry terminal, as well as we had discussions around the future downtown design. So all in all, good feedback. The Owl Crescent to Gravelly Bay section, construction section is out to tender, and it'll close on July the 20th. So we are anticipating that construction to begin in the fall. In terms of the beach fires, that program was suspended on June 8th. And then so it had 38 operational days this year. Peak visitation was from 6 to 9 p.m., which is interesting. It's a little bit different from past years where we didn't have the program. So that is showing that it was well received, and that we did get increasing visits in the afternoon as a result of that program. The Little River, BC Ferries is not supportive of having a beach fire program on their lands, so that didn't move forward. And then just quickly on the Seal Bay and Mount Jeffrey, Seal Bay, so that was from a 2019 plan. I think we're progressing really well through that plan. There was 22 short-term priorities, which we're hoping to be delivered by 2020. So a little behind, but I think with the pandemic and such, I think we're still in good stead. 14 of those are completed, 5 are on hold, 2 are ongoing, and 1 hasn't been started. And then in terms of medium priorities, we had 10 priorities. 3 of those have been completed, 2 are in progress, and 5 haven't been started. So again, I think we're doing well on delivery of that management plan. In terms of Mount Jeffrey, that was a 2017 plan. It had short-term priorities up to 2020. There was 11 priorities, 5 have been completed, 2 are on hold, 2 are ongoing, and 2 are in progress. So working well on those. And then in the medium term to 2025, we had 12 priorities, 1 completed, 1 ongoing, 3 in progress, and 7 not started. So again, I think we're moving well towards the completion of that management plan as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Victor.
Yeah, thanks for the update. And I went through the Mount Jeffrey short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and really pleased to see the full sum list and the collaboration with BC Parks and TLC and Conservation Hornby and Comox Guardian. And it says that one completed item is around the opportunity for place names for Mount Jeffrey. Can you provide a little bit more information on that? I think that's of high interest.
Yeah, sure. Through the chair of the director. Yeah, we did have a cultural report that was done by Jesse Morin that he worked with Comox First Nation to provide us place names, and we are going to use those place names once we kind of work on our signage plan, which we're still working towards.
That's great. Thanks so much. And happy to see that the Cross Island Trail for downtown section. First of all, the support at the market that you found with Denman residents, that was good to see. And it's good to see that we might tender this in August, so next month. So we're tracking well with that for the small section across downtown Denman. That's awesome. One question I have on the whole project, which is in the long term, is we are stuck in a similar way as the Royston Seaside Trail is is the Riverway portion in Cornier, where they have 4 or 5 property owners that are not quite willing to deal to help us complete the connection. So I see that in your language, you say, you know, we have looked at possibilities for Corrigal and Al Crescent in the long term, and there's currently no pathway. But I'm just curious if one thing I suggested to the mayor of Corny is it can be a very long-term strategy, for example, for those 4 properties in the Corny corridor, whereby maybe there's a plan to purchase the properties when they come up for sale, parcel out the right-of-way that you would need, and then sell the remainder of the property on the open market. Is that the kind of strategy that exists or that we could utilize for both those situations, including the Denman one? Because I think you're going to continue to hear residents saying they would like to see full connectivity, which isn't there.
Yeah, through the chair to the director, that type of strategy isn't something that we've considered in terms of acquiring and then chunking out a piece for the road and then reselling it. We're hopeful that maybe the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure will actually work towards acquiring the road dedication, in which case we wouldn't have that issue. But you know, as it stands right now, we've got portions that don't have official road dedication. So we really need to work with those property owners need to be on board to kind of support that project. So staff have spent a considerable amount of time already on that. And so right now we're trying to focus on delivery of the owl to Gravelly Bay, and then work on the downtown section. So we're still trying to kind of take those kind of low hanging fruit. And once those kind of have been established, then we can kind of look at maybe revisiting that section again.
That's great. Thank you. I'll keep my thought for in 3 years from now when we've cut the ribbons on those 2 other projects. Thanks.
Not seeing any other questions. Vote on receipt of report. All in favor? Okay. Going to new business. Addendum upon approval of the committee. No addendum. So there's some additional items there. Moving to item number 1. Okay, so we're good. Moving to termination. I was. Okay, all in favor? Carried. It's kind of